Free your mind.
How many of you have ever seen the movie The Matrix? Two pills, one blue, one red. And he has to make a choice. If he chooses the blue pill, he'll fall asleep. If he chooses the red pill, he'll finally learn the truth. And I'm here to give you that red pill. I'm here to give you that red pill.
All governments are immoral and criminal institutions because they force everyone, under threat of violence, to pay mandatory taxes for life. There are hundreds of taxes, from property tax to income tax to inheritance tax. You must pay them all, or else the government will use the power and force of its machinery to seize your bank account, arrest you, and put you in jail. How is that any different than the mafia? Governments demand we pay our dues regularly, promise us we'll be safe and protected if we do, and if we don't, agents come around to shake us down or put us away. If taxes were voluntary, then governments wouldn't automatically be immoral or criminal, because they would be completely funded by donation only. Thus, their very existence limited by voluntarism. Name one thing that governments provide that people couldn't do better, easier, and more efficiently at the community level. There is nowhere on earth you can go that isn't controlled by a statist government. Every piece of land has been divided up and claimed by 196 nations, all of which are controlled by some form of forced governance. There is nowhere left on earth that sovereign, freedom-loving individuals can go live freely without a mafioso government forcing them to pay taxes and obey laws. All current forms of government initiate and mandate violence and slavery upon their populations. We are all slaves to our governments because every nation forces under threat of violence and kidnapping that we must pay them a percentage of our income. So if the definition of slavery is forcefully taking 100% of someone's income, what is it called when governments forcefully take 60% of someone's income? Is that not slavery? We are taught in school that slavery ended long ago, and it is universally understood that slavery is immoral. But if governments still are forcibly taking even 1% of their population's income, that is still slavery, and even 1% slavery is immoral. The very definition of the word government is mind control, and the vast majority of people worldwide are absolutely mind controlled by their governments, medias, and education systems to believe that their statist government is a moral and altruistic institution that exists for the benefit of the people. The reality is, of course, the opposite. The reality is that all nations are like open-air slave plantations, allowing their servant populations to choose their occupation, giving the illusion of freedom, then swooping in on payday to steal the fruits of your labor. This is why all governments are criminal and immoral, and why the only system of just governance is anarchism or voluntarism. There is no political solution to the problem of government. Voting for a new ceremonial figurehead every 4 years has never, will never, and could never create any significant, lasting positive change, because governments cannot be improved or made moral from within. None of them respect the right of the individual to opt out of being governed. All governments around the world initiate the use of violence in the form of police and coercion in the form of taxes, and this is absolutely immoral and unacceptable. Consensual sex is moral because it is voluntary, whereas rape is immoral because it's forced. Similarly, things like charity donations and the free market are moral because they are voluntary, whereas theft and taxation are immoral because they are forced. The root problem festering within all governments around the world is not the rife internal corruption or criminality. Those are merely symptoms and side effects of statism. The paramount problem with government is that its mandates are mandatory. Its compulsions are compulsory. For governments to be moral institutions, all taxes and interactions must be made voluntary. If governments are honestly in existence for our benefit, then they must be voluntary and never initiate the use of violence against their populations.
The truth force. Presidents are puppets, while the true rulers rule from behind the scenes. The real rulers are those who control our monetary system and the mainstream media. A tiny handful of people, made up mostly of Freemasons, run and control the vast majority of the world's banks and media. As damning and easily provable as is this fact of Freemason control, there is one other incredible fact, which has also been held from humanity for 500 years now. This fact is even more damning and more easily provable, and is also a direct result of the Freemason control over the minds of the masses worldwide. It is the most ridiculed, censored, and hidden fact in history. If this fact was made known to the world at large, just this one fact has the power to completely transform the world and everyone in it for the better, holistically, in a myriad of ways. Our rulers are well aware of this, and that is exactly why this truth has been held from us so expertly for so long. It is about the truth of who we are, where we come from, the actual position and significance of humans, Earth, the sun, moon, and stars. The fact is, the Earth is flat and motionless.
And that is the revelation that will finally break the Matrix.
You have been taught from the earliest ages that you live on a spinning ball, that NASA has sent men to the moon.
And you are the result of a Big Bang explosion which created everything out of nothing. Yet nothing could be farther from the truth.
The pictures and videos presented to the public by NASA and other government space agencies are as real as a Hollywood motion picture and as scientific as science fiction. Science facts, on the other hand, prove the flat Earth. There are hundreds of proofs and scientific experiments which have conclusively shown the Earth to be a stationary plane. But you have never and will never hear about these heavily censored experiments in our controlled media. Measurements have been repeatedly taken throughout history until modern times to test the Earth's supposed curvature. And every time have proven what our eyes and experience tell us to be true. The Earth simply does not curve downwards. This mythical curvature exists only in the fisheye lens footage they constantly film, in the fake CG images of Earth they constantly propagate. The spinning globe and every argument used to defend it is simply pseudoscience masquerading as truth.
Millions of people worldwide are waking up to this incredible rediscovery. I encourage you to please explore this fascinating subject for yourself.
Strangely enough, there's left in the world today an area as big as the United States that's never been seen by a human being. That's never been seen by a human being. And I think it's quite astonishing that there should be an area as big as that unexplored.
flat Earth has long been touted as the mother of all conspiracy theories, suppressed and ridiculed for centuries as being an ignorant, unscientific worldview. But the facts of the matter are far from what you've been told. It is a fact, not a theory, that bodies of water always seek and find their own level. From a pond, lake, or an ocean, the natural physics of water is to find and remain level. It is a fact that the majority of Earth is covered in such level water, thus making it an unscientific theory to postulate that Earth is actually a gigantic sphere with bendy oceans curving all the way around it. It is an unproven, unscientific theory with no observable, measurable, or repeatable evidence to claim that bodies of water can somehow bend, cling to the exterior of shapes, and show convexity upon their surface. It is a fact, not a theory, that we are able to observe objects at incredibly long distances, far beyond what would be possible if Earth were a globe 25,000 miles in circumference, as we're told. For example, it is a fact that in Genoa, Italy, from just above sea level, it is possible to see the distant islands of Elba, Caprea, and Corsica 80 to 125 miles away. It is a necessary theory that the globe Earth must curve 8 inches per mile squared if it really be a ball 25,000 miles in circumference, as we're told. But based on such a theory, these islands would all be completely hidden behind thousands of feet of curved Earth. It is a fact, not a theory, that the horizon always appears perfectly flat, 360 degrees around the observer, regardless of altitude. All amateur balloon, rocket, plane, and drone footage show a completely flat horizon as high as we can reach, over 20 miles or 120,000 feet up. It is an observable, testable, repeatable, scientific fact of reality that Polaris, the North Pole star, situated perfectly over the North Pole center of Earth, never moves a single inch. Night after night, year after year, century after century, with all the other fixed stars remaining fixed in their relative constellations, revolving perfect circles around Polaris. It is also an unobservable, unscientific theory to claim that the Earth is spinning 1,000 miles per hour, and the Milky Way shoots millions of miles per hour more off through infinite space, when we cannot see, hear, feel, or otherwise observe or prove any such motion. And we can see clearly for ourselves Polaris never moving, and all the other stars revolving around it. This is just a brief introduction to the many observable, testable, repeatable scientific facts of our level, motionless plain Earth that have been suppressed and ridiculed for centuries in favor of various unobservable, untestable, unscientific theories purporting we live on a tilting, wobbling, spinning, ball-shaped Earth. To learn much more about this most important and highly censored topic, please follow the links in the description box.
Long before the theory of gravity was a glimmer in Newton's imagination, the natural physics of density and buoyancy already perfectly explained why apples fall down. Quite simply, objects fall or rise based on their relative density to the medium surrounding them. Apples fall because they are denser than the air, while helium balloons rise because they are lighter. No gravity necessary. Everything seeks its relative density and rises or falls until settling accordingly. Now this has absolutely nothing to do with gravity. Gravity is a hypothetical magnetic-like force to help explain the heliocentric theory of the universe. To claim the existence of a physical law without a single practical evidential example is hearsay, not science. How is it that gravity is so strong that it can hold all the oceans and people stuck to the underside of the ball Earth, but so weak that it allows birds, bugs, and balloons to casually evade its downward pulling force? How is it that gravity holds our bodies clumped to the underside of a ball Earth, but yet we can easily walk or jump and feel no such constant downward pulling force? Gravity, both metaphorically and quite literally, just does not hold any water. Not as a sound theory of cosmology, and not as a law supposedly responsible for holding in the world's oceans.
Everything we think we know about the meat industry is a lie.
If you're told the lie enough times, it becomes part of your reality. And if enough people are taught that lie, well, now it becomes part of the culture. This is the Matrix. The lie we tell ourselves about where our food is coming from. Where our food is coming from.
The reality is far more disturbing.
We torture and kill 2 billion sentient, loving animals every week. 2 billion.
And most of us don't even blink an eye. How is it possible that we can kill 300 animals every second and not question that? Because of the story we've been told. The Matrix is a story. When told enough times to enough people, it becomes part of that culture. It becomes the tradition. Just because we have a tradition doesn't mean it's morally acceptable. Slavery. Less than 200 years ago. And that was a tradition. Tradition and morality are not always the same. And as we evolve as a culture, so do our traditions. We've been taught to perceive this animal to be different from this animal. And veganism is simply changing your perception. That's it. That's all it is. You just change your perception. It's not necessary to kill an animal. You don't have to kill animals. If you believe the image on the carton is where you're getting your milk from, you're deceiving yourself. This is a fantasy. It only exists in your head. It's a blue pill fed to you by the industry
To get you to buy their products.
This is the Matrix, the lie we tell ourselves about where our food is coming from.
The choice between knowledge or ignorance, slavery or freedom.
The truth will set us free.
If we choose to accept it and act upon it, knowledge applied is power in the one.
Break free from the Matrix. It's time to evolve.
This is Neo-Human Eve.
Early humans ate mostly plants. And the reason for this is actually quite simple.
Humans do not have any specialized genetic, anatomical, or physiological adaptations to meat consumption. By contrast, we have many adaptations to plant consumption. We have longer digestive tracts than do carnivores, and this allows humans to digest plants and fibers that require longer processing time. We also lack the ability to produce our own vitamin C. Vitamin C is found in plants, so the fact that we cannot make our own indicates just how reliant upon plants we actually are. This is why we have trichromatic vision. This is very different from carnivores, which have dichromatic vision. We can see more colors, and this is very important, especially if you need to find fresh, ripe fruit.
The idea that humans must consume animal flesh and excretions, meat and dairy, as part of a balanced diet is a monstrous myth. There is not a single vitamin, mineral, nutrient, or any other such vital ingredient to health, not a single thing found in meat or dairy products that cannot be found in greater abundance and more optimally in the plant kingdom. For instance, there are more omegas in seaweed than in fish. Over twice as much protein in spinach than steak. Meat and dairy products are highly acidic, fattening, cholesterol-laden, artery-clogging, lymph-clotting, mucus-forming, constipating, difficult to digest, and full of worms, parasites, hormones, and chemicals. Eggs are actually unfertilized avian menstrual cycles, otherwise known as chicken periods. Milk is the pus and hormone-filled mammary excretions of a female cow and meant to nourish her young. None of these animal bits and pieces are beneficial or necessary for human consumption. There is not a single chronic disease or deficiency exclusive to vegans.
However, heart disease, cancer, diabetes, and many other major health problems have all been cured by switching to a 100% vegan diet. The idea that you need to eat another animal's flesh to be strong is a ridiculous superstition. Some of the strongest animals in nature, like gorillas, elephants, rhinos, are all vegetarians. Shaolin martial monks, arguably the toughest men in the world, are all strict vegans. Our human anatomy is undeniably designed to subsist on plant foods and not on animal flesh. Literally every aspect of our bodies proves we are herbivore, frugivores, and not carnivore or omnivores. Put simply, humans are biologically built vegans. In using comparative anatomy to determine what man was meant to eat, we should look at the species most similar to man, namely the anthropoid apes, chimpanzees, gorillas, and orangutans. Of all animals, man's digestive organs and teeth most closely resemble these apes. All omnivorous and carnivorous animals eat their meat raw. However, eating raw or bloody meat disgusts us as humans. Therefore, we must cook it and season it to buffer the taste of flesh. If humans were truly meant to eat meat, then we would eat all our meat raw and bloody. The thought of eating such meat makes one's stomach turn. We as humans are conditioned to believe that animal flesh is good for us and that we were meant to consume it. Finally, plain moral decency and ethics should be reason enough to end this animal holocaust.
I'm here to give